Welcome everyone to this week's episode. We are proud to finally present you with our newest series of our podcast called The Local Legends. I think the outdoor industry kind of gets carried away by pushing the big names and kind of shies away to what's important, and that's our roots and traditions of the outdoors. I also think we can all agree and say we get tired of not getting to see the full story, but instead we just get crammed with the products and their sponsors. That is where this series comes to play. I think about the days where my dad, my brother, and I, after we got done hunting, we drove by the local check-in station to see if anyone had any better luck than we did. And if they did, then us and about 10 to 15 other locals gathered around the truck bed and we asked for their story and asked if they had any tips of how they had success. These episodes will be very similar to Jeff Booth and Ethan Kyle's episodes that we released in the past few months. I don't want you guys to think local legends. This means locals around us. But everywhere has a local that gets it done year after year, and that's the people we're going to target. In these episodes, we're going to go over how they got started in the outdoors, some of their favorite memories, their tips and tactics that lead to success year after year, and most importantly, the story of their most recent harvest. To kick off the first episode, we have one of our own local legends from Oklahoma, Christopher Hammond. Chris talks about how he grew up in the outdoors and what led to him actually being sponsored by Matthews, as he's an indoor and outdoor pro archer. When Chris isn't working his day job or shooting competitions, he's traveling the U.S. with his buddies, trying to find the next animal to harvest with his bow. I'll tell you one thing, Chris knows how to shoot big deer year after year, and this is why we brought him on the episode. This year he shot a buck he named Obie, and he has several years of history with this buck, including last year he passed him several times as a 150 to 160 inch buck. Little did Chris know that this buck would blow up and become his biggest buck to date. Here's the story, and here's our first episode of The Local Legends. I hope you guys enjoy.
There is always a local hunter that seems to always get it done year after year. They tend to use up the majority of their PTO during the month of November. They usually spend more time sitting in a tree than they do at home during the rut. During this time, their Little Debbie, Red Bull, and jerky consumption quadruples for the year. When success hits, you'll find their picture on Facebook stating Sweet November. Welcome to our podcast series called Local Legends. In today's episode, we're going to hear how a local legend repeatedly finds success and the story of their harvest. Now here's your host, Taylor Smith and Gunnar Womack.
So Chris, thank you for coming on this week. This is the first time actually getting to meet and actually talk, but from following you from Facebook and all that, you've had an incredible year, and year after year, it seems like you get it done, especially if people, sure, they're not staring at you right now, they're staring right over your head at those mounts, but I'm glad you came on, and we got to meet you, and we get to kind of pick your brain over some stuff, so thank you.
Okay, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So let's kind of go, like I said, the most generic question we have on this series is, how'd you get started in the outdoors? And kind of dive deep into that, and then we'll transition to, how this year's been going.
Yeah. So, man, my story's a little different than most. This is kind of one of those things you just get lucky with who you run into and who as like a little kid. But so raised by a single mom most of my life, and made a friend with my buddy Josh when I was in like 5th or 6th grade. And all he talked about was hunting. That was it. Hunting and fishing, right? And it took me until I think 6th grade to finally like tag along. And fishing was my thing back then, never hunted. And then ultimately, man, he joined a JOAD league years ago in Shawnee, Oklahoma at Tabe's Archery. And Brenda was our coach. Rest in peace, Brenda. But she was the coach, and I joined them one day and joined up. And that's man, I never looked back. I've been shooting archery ever since, bow hunting ever since. And that's really what got me started. Was just having a good buddy that was willing to take me. And then, of course, just like anything else with sports, my mom would take us once, his mom would take us the next time. And we just tried to make as many as we could. So, yeah, that's how I got introduced, to archery and, the outdoors, really. It was through my buddy Josh.
So did you guys look out and did he have some land, or did you start hunting public, or what happened there?
Yeah. So we did both. He had property kind of back behind his house that we got permission to, and then it butted up to some public. So we had free reign.
Oh
Man, it seems like we could run for miles, is what it felt like. But we were little kids, so I'm sure it was only like a couple 100 acres.
yeah.
But man, it was awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, so when I started growing up, I kind of was in the times of getting free permission was still, still something you could get. I mean, you can still get it. Don't get me wrong, but it's hard, And
hard.
so those days were good. Those were some fun days.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we would just take off.
Yep.
Like it didn't matter.
Yeah, there was a creek by my house, so my parents split up, and I lived majority of the time with my mother too. So I kind of same situation there, and which I still hunted with my dad during season, but that's what she would drop me and my buddies off down at the creek, and we'd take 22, and we were off. I mean, still to today, I couldn't tell you who owned the place.
Right? Yeah.
So, it just never. Everyone came by and waved at us, and we never had to worry about anything. And that was, I mean, to do that now,
Oh,
it's just those kids are missing out on.
They are. I remember we used to fish like every pond we saw.
Yep.
So
We used to duck hunt every pond we saw from. I don't know if you're familiar with the area, but from Morrison all the way to Sooner Lake. I mean, my buddy Cody, his dad would drop us off at a pond, and we'd be like, "Who owns it?" And he's like, "Don't worry about it. If you see him, just say I dropped you all off." And we're like, "Okay." And sure enough, people come in and be like, "Oh, hey, Cody, did Larry bring you guys out here?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Kill them all," And now those places are leased up by guides. Like you can get a ticket, fined, everything taken away from you, your truck, your gun. I mean,
yeah,
it's
no
crazy.
doubt.
So yeah, I got to go ahead.
I was just saying, this definitely changed. Changed.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm glad I got to kind of catch the end of those times, because it was definitely a blast.
Yeah, I'm too young for those times.
Yeah.
I didn't get any of that at all.
Man.
Yeah, it was different, Gunner.
Sure.
I mean, I can remember the days when, Dad still had a bunch of permission from those farmers he used to hunt on all the time. That's changed.
Yeah.
I can remember one time before I even met Taylor, they called my dad to kill a turkey, and he was like, "Yeah, go down there as soon as Gunner kills one, you can go down there." They ended up killing one before I think we killed like close to the same day, so they didn't end up going down there. But it's kind of funny how our paths almost crossed.
Yeah.
But they didn't yet, and then I ended up meeting him like, I don't know, however many years later.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was a funny situation. Our mutual friend called Gunner's dad and was like, "Hey, we see turkeys on the wheat field behind our buddy's house all the time. Like, can we go get one?" And his dad was like, "Yeah, let Gunner get one first, and you guys go." Gunner killed one that morning, and then we killed some that afternoon. And when I met him, Steve was like, "You guys killed some of your first turkeys off my property." And I was like, "Steve, no, we didn't." And still today, he's like, "Are you sure? You just telling me that?" I'm like, "No, I promise you, I can take you exactly where we shot those turkeys." So yeah, it's kind of funny. So, yeah, no. So when you started growing up, let's talk about what the bows were like back in the day to what they are now.
Man, it's kind of wild. That's kind of been the new thing, though, is like a lot of the guys, not a lot, there's been a couple, like Levi and Crispy, they've gone bought old bows and then went and hunted them. So like Levi's thing was cool because he like was on eBay bidding on it.
Yeah.
All excited to do that. But yeah, no, the bows back in the day, man, I think I started out with a Golden Eagle. I don't remember the model or anything like that. Right. I just remember the grip was like this, like it had the natural grip, so your hand like was at an angle. That's what I remember. But then the next bow I got was a Matthews MQ1. It was the solo cam, and that thing, I remember that thing being so bad to the bone. Like, and then now, well, and then I think my hunting bow was the MQ32 with an overdraw that made my arrows like tiny. And I was running a 400 spine. Like, it was just not good stuff. Not good. But it shot 300 feet per second, and it sounded like a 22 going off. So,
Yep.
oh, this is great. And I had no idea why all the does kept jumping my string and back. But then now you got like the Lift and the Lift X that are so freaking quiet, aim like a dream, and shoot as fast as you can get. Like, it's wild how far they've come along.
Yeah, so before Bear went to straight Bear, and they're still called Fred Bears in the 90s, that was my first bow. And I think I started shooting in, I want to say 2007 or 8. I got, my dad bought that at an auction like in 2001. And I remember just laying around. And one day I just was at his house, and he's about to take me to my mom's. And I was like, hey, I'm going to take you that bow. And he's like, whatever, I've never used it, you know. The draw length was so long. My knock point was like the back of my head, and I took it to Arc in Stillwater to shorten it up, and he did whatever he could to try it or to shorten it up, and he said, man, the only thing I can do from here is tell you to get another bow to shorten that up. And of course I was like, I can't afford that. Like, here I am in 6th or 7th grade, like I can't afford that. Right. And so I hunted with that bow until I want to say 2009 or 10, maybe 11. And no, I take that back. I didn't start hunting with that bow. I shot it and shot it and shot it and just didn't feel comfortable with it. But it was one of those things you'd shoot, sound like a 22. I could run down to the target and beat my arrow down there because it was so slow, you know. And but I shot that thing for a few years before I even wanted to hunt with it. And then my stepfather, when my mom got married again, had 80 acres, and that was the first time I went out. And I just bought some arrows from Walmart, and there's some old pictures of me with my first doe. The arrow looks as long as her because I didn't know anything. You know, I was like, oh, that arrow sticks out the end. I mean, that's what you want. I know you didn't want it too short. And so I hunted, like I said, I don't think I bought a new bow until I want to say 2016, and I bought the Matthews Helium.
Okay, yeah.
And I hunted with that until this year, and it actually I want to say October 8th, maybe 9th. It actually finally failed on me and rolled off the cam and cut through the cam, and the bottom cam stayed in full draw until I took it in to get the string messed up. It was the craziest thing. My peep sight went up like 9 inches. All sorts of things happened. I was trying to shoot this old doe, and she just stood there at 20 yards and just looked at me while I just had a meltdown of trying to figure out what happened, you know, and she just stared at me. So, and luckily I had a backup bow, but I'll have a Lift or Lift X next year. I about bought one this year, but then I got engaged, so that kind of took the extra savings account away. But
that'll do it.
I told everyone, they're like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "I wear about a size Matthews Lift X 33 for shirt size for wedding gifts. So if you want that, just go ahead and get that for me." But no, yeah, it's crazy to see how times have changed with the bows, and it's funny to see. You know, I had the Matthews Helium, the lightest bow for a while that Matthews made, and they come out with the Lift, and I'm like, man, I know what they used to make that bow. I know what idea they used, and it's funny to see these bow companies go back almost to their old ways and use some of the designs and, you know, platforms. I'm not saying everything, like there's still so much that's changed, but I'm saying it's kind of like with Chevy. You know, they had the 80 square body everyone loved. They produced all these other vehicles. 2014, they bring back just a little bit of the square body in there, and then they top sells again, you know. So it's just crazy to see these companies slowly roll back to an idea that went good, and so that's. I'll own a Lift. It reminds me of the Helium, and I love that Helium. I could shoot. I could keep up with about anyone with that thing, and that's not me just saying that. That's me testing that.
Right.
So.
The Lift, I've got a black one and a tan one, but dude, this black Lift, it's a 33, and everything if I pointed at something, it seems like it dies. Like it's unbelievable. And even like in the heat of the moment when everything's shaking, it just shakes in the lungs, you know, it doesn't really leak. So it's that bow's so good. Gosh.
That's what I'll say. That's my Helium. I shot one deer, my very first buck I ever shot. No, my second buck. I ever shot. My first one was just in, your little small buck you had to shoot to get your first one down. But my second buck was pretty nice deer. And hit my elbow off the back of my blind that I put up. First year ever hunting out of it. Should have thought about it. Shot, hit up top, up high, and right below the spine, And that deer survived. And I told myself, I'll never do that. It'll never be my failure again. And from there on, I've never had an animal get away from me with that bow. And then this year, I switched to my backup bow, which is a PSE Carbonaire. It's nothing that great, but I shot what potentially could have been my biggest archery buck this year and didn't find it. So now I'm like, man, I got to get back to Matthews. I know it's not the bow, but I got to get back.
Fishing, man. I'm good.
Yep.
Do it.
Yep. I'll be back.
It gets to be a mental thing, is what it gets to be.
Yeah.
You've been shooting the same, I guess you could say company for years and years. You're so confident in it, and then you switch to something else, and then something goes wrong, and you're just in the back of your head, you're like, I gotta get back to it. I feel exactly what you're feeling right now. I get it. So
yeah, it's been a disaster on that subject this year. I've dwelled in that one, but yeah, it was my error and heat of the moment situation. I knocked it I let the sight rest at the wrong spot, and I was like, oh, that's vitals, and I let go instead of encountering it. I put it down for about a 4 to 5 inch drop at 30 yards because that's what I figured he'd do, and then he dropped about 6 to 8, and it was still too high. But but hey, if that's my second one in 10 years, I think I'm doing decent. So it just sucks that it just sucks. It was with $2. Which I'm not saying that, people hear that and get upset, but I'm not saying that does are lesser, but when you watch a buck for that long, it hurts. So
yeah, no, that's tough, and it's gonna happen. And if it hasn't happened, you just haven't done it long enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's been crazy to watch bows evolve to what they are. I mean, that's
everything.
I've only had 2.
Yeah, the bows, the arrows, all of it.
Yep.
I mean, even the way we're making strings these days, it's level.
Yeah, it's wild. What so kind of go over I know we kind of talked about this before, what we're gonna do, but I'm gonna throw this in here. Kind of go over what your setup is for everyone, and explain how you got connected with Matthews in the situation you're in right now.
Yeah, so what you're referencing there is so I shoot professionally for Matthews Archery. They're my main sponsor. I have several other sponsors, companies that have backed me since day one, and I know the guys and girls that work there. They're phenomenal companies. But my setup is the Matthews Lift X. I've got it sitting there. That's what I'm looking at over here.
Yeah.
But I shoot the Matthews Lift X 33. I'm shooting 75-pound mods at a 30-inch draw length. So the sight that I'm running a B3 Rise Exact. I'm a big fan of their pins. I actually added one because you can with that one. So I'm running a 5-pin sight, and it's a movable sight for everybody who's not familiar with it. And then I'm running the Hamsky Epsilon Rest. The one thing that I'm really impressed with the last 2 years since I made the switch to them is I've been shooting the Easton 4mm Axis, those match grade arrows, and they're so freaking good. But I shoot those with tack vanes and a 4-fletch, and then I'm shooting the Schwacker LRP system. I don't know if you're used to it or if you're familiar with it, but it's got to be the best system as far as being able to practice with your broadheads and being able to switch over and go into, walk in and go kill.
Right.
So that's really it, man. I mean, I shoot a hinge release, shoot the B3 Infinity. But yeah, as far as I know people love to kind of geek out on arrow speeds and weights. I am not a heavy arrow guy. I want to go on the record and say that I'm not a heavy arrow guy. However, I'm shooting a heavy arrow. It's just how it worked out. And heavy for me. So it's not that heavy, but I'm shooting a 478 grain arrow at 301 feet per second
Wow.
with that setup. So it's cooking.
Yeah.
And like, it seems like everything I point that bow at comes home with me. So
Yeah.
it's just been extremely forgiving, and we're getting along great. So yeah.
So is your competition bow and your regular hunting bows at the same setup or the same bow?
Yeah, so strangely, so it can be, and it can't. It just depends. So I have the Matthews title behind me over there that I'll be shooting in indoor. But
Mhm.
last year I converted over to the Lift X outdoors in the 3D on the 3D circuit. So it goes to a much fatter arrow, which I believe is right over this shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in that quiver. The reason why I did that was that string angle, that 33-inch string angle just fits me better.
Mhm.
It's just much more comfortable and repeatable. When I get too long of an axle to axle bow, so like indoor and stuff like that, you normally shoot a really long bow, like a 38
Right.
or axle to axle bow. That string angle just gets a little uncomfortable, or I feel like I have to like lean back, or instead of being here and tight and everything in line. But that's just me, how my face is built and all that. But to go back to answer your question about um, how I don't know how how my relationship kind of came to fruition with Matthews. Um, I had target panic really bad. You guys familiar with what target panic
Oh,
is?
I'm horrible with it.
Yeah, so I had it really bad, so bad that I actually missed some targets whenever I was going and shooting with some buddies at the 3D range. Like I couldn't even hold my pin on the target,
Mhm.
and I was like, I'm done trying to shoot 3D. Like this is a joke. I was like, I know I can kill something because I can put that pin on there and slam it. We'll be good.
Yeah.
But then me being hard headed and not knowing when to quit, I was like, no, I want to get this beat. So a buddy and I set up this little system where I'd film myself shooting, right,
Mhm.
and send it home, and then we just go back and forth. And I just started training with my hinge release, and I got over the target panic. And once I got over it, I told my wife at the time that I'd like to travel and compete nationally at the ASA events.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to jump in the deep end and go into a class that's a 50-yard max, where you have to judge the distance, so you don't know how far it is. I was like, I'm going to jump in. Let's go. It was called Open A back then. And it was all the way down in Foley, Alabama, which is down there by Pensacola, Florida, like
Right.
Orange Beach, all that.
Mhm.
And we get there, and it's my first pro-am after getting rid of target panic. And I go out, and on the first target, I shoot a 5. And I shoot a javelina in the spine. And I'm like, awesome. Awesome. But then I proceeded to not shoot an 8, and I shot a pile of 12s and finished 9 up for the day. And then came back out the next day, shoot 2 days. Came out the next day, and the first target, I shot a 5. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And then I did the exact same thing though, and finished 9 up again, and finished 18 up for the weekend, and got second at the pro am. And I was like, okay, we can work with this. 2 big
Mhm.
mistakes cost me from winning, and they were on the
Oh,
first of the day, and I just misjudged them too far. Right, I just thought they were much further than what they were, like way further than what they were. I can still see that javelina. Like I'm
yeah.
surprised I hit it, but man, that kind of took off. So I podiumed. So I got second at that national event, and I podiumed at a couple others. Ended up getting third for shooter of the year, and got kicked out of the class. Went to semi-pro and came out the first pro-am that year, and got second at that event. And that's when I started to get some attention, right?
Right.
Podium. Um, and I think you get attention for being successful in the woods, but I don't think you get as much attention as people think, unless you're putting content out there.
Right.
Because I'm not going to say anybody can kill a big deer, but anybody can kill a big deer every now and again. They can.
Yeah. 100%.
You can be blessed with some of the best dirt out there. It'll just happen. But I don't know how much attention you get with that, unless you kill something like Gunner did. Then that changes. But
Yeah.
yeah, but But man, winning and having success on the tournament trail as a rookie, or not as a rookie, sorry, as an amateur,
Mm-hmm.
that got the attention. And I had always shot Matthews. I mean, you heard one of my first bows, my first real bow that I bought was an MQ1. And one of the guys at Matthews reached out and he literally asked, he said, why don't I have a resume from Chris Hammond? He called one of the local shops. And I was like, what? They want
Wow.
one for me? And man, I submitted that resume and just started, from the bottom. It was just a state level shooter where I got some help on a bow, and then shot my way into a national contract, and then won Rookie of the Year as a pro my first year in the division. Made a couple shoot offs, podiums, and just have been in the mix, right? So that's what helps. But since then, I've established some really good relationships with the guys at the company. They're freaking awesome, all of them. They're great guys, and some of the women, they're freaking awesome. So shout out to Tanya if she ever sees this. No,
I'll cut it and
great.
send it to her.
Or Derek, everybody. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started. And then you never really know who you're going to meet and who you're going to be hanging out with, and then who you're going to be calling great friends. So now I got like this core group of friends that we travel all over the nation with, that is from Pennsylvania, North Carolina, South Carolina, Oklahoma, like here, Norman, Edmond, and out in Muskogee. And we all travel together. We're like, I mean, I don't know. We're just a crew now. So it's pretty.
Right. Do you have like a normal job, or do you just stay on the road hooked up with that? Kind of what's your deal there?
No, I have a normal job. That's probably what makes it the hardest, because
I feel that.
yeah, a lot of the guys I'm competing against, the top level guys, their job is that. I don't want to say they have a job and they're really good at it, and they work really hard, right?
Chris B.
Yeah, Chris B. He was a tournament archer prior, to all that. It's kind of crazy to think that I remember watching his videos where they were just making fun of like the different different archery types, like different archery, like the Rager and all that stuff. Kind of a knockoff of the Dude Perfect stuff.
Yeah.
But it was hilarious because it was relatable to everybody that shot. They're like, you know who that is,
Yeah.
But yeah, so man, I work in corporate America. Yeah, I mean, I'll say it. I work for CarMax. I'm in production. I've been with that company for 14 years.
Oh wow.
In less than 30 days.
Wow. Congratulations on that.
That's wild, huh?
Yeah.
But if you'd have told me I'd be working for that company when I was in college, I'd have asked, what's CarMax?
Right.
So, yeah, pretty wild ride, but man, they're flexible. I've been successful. We've been successful together. And then, they allow me to work the schedule and take the time off that I need to do this. So it works out.
Yeah, that's funny, because I asked that because a lot of people are like, why aren't you guys going full time? And I'm like, well, I have to work that 9 to 5 to pay for this. You know what I mean? And a lot of people don't understand what it takes, but then I can only imagine in your shoes, everything you do, what it takes. So
how many tournaments and events do you go to during hunting season, or is it like, does that like kind of cut into your woods time, or?
The only time that it gets close to cutting into it is the early hunts we have. So if we can do anything like Nebraska, that's where it would cut close. Maybe this next year, if I can get on some early stuff out west, because the world championships are in August. So it gets tight right around there.
Okay. Yeah.
But for the most part, the tournament schedule goes from January through August. So
okay,
yeah,
that works out pretty good then, actually.
Yeah. Not bad. So, and it worked out even better because they moved the biggest tournament of all time, which is Vegas. They moved the Vegas event from I want to say it was the first weekend in February to where it's now in March, I believe. So they moved it quite a ways back, and I didn't know how prepared I was going to be because I'm going out to Arizona to do a hunt with one of my buddies, Hunter Hogan, and we're going to be out there for 10. I mean, we'll be hunting for 10 days, so it's going to be what, 12 days.
Blast.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So,
What are you going after in Arizona?
mule deer, coos deer, and then I think we can kill 2 havies.
That's gonna be cool.
Yeah,
It's always been one of my coos deer. It's always been a bucket list. I've killed 2 mule deer, not with my bow yet. I want to real bad, but if you can get a coos deer with your bow, holy cow, dude! That's kind of the thing
Dude,
right there in my brain. But
yeah, it is. I understand they're small, and I like to shoot things with. I guess I like to go after things that have big antlers.
Yeah.
But that's part of the the lure to it is they're hard to kill. What do they call them? Ghosts. And I've got a bunch of friends out there in Arizona. Like you won't be able to kill one. So now it's kind of I want to prove it.
Yeah.
I also have a buddy that was from Florida. Got the tag, went out there, and they walked out there, and a buck walked across the road, and he shot it at like 101 yards and killed it. He was done in 30 minutes.
Wow. Ain't that how that goes?
Yeah, you hit it.
Yeah.
So
That's gunner's luck right there. Don't let them fool you.
Not in Kansas. Not in Kansas.
Anywhere else besides Kansas, gunner. That's
to work
him.
my tail off in Kansas, but you're right. I am a pretty lucky individual. I will own it. I will own that.
Right.
But so I kind of want to take it back a couple steps. I feel like this is kind of tie everything together, but kind of go back. So we talked about you growing up, and how you started. When was your first time you shot a big deer and you're like, man, this kind of piques my interest? And kind of what kind of built that fire behind that even more?
Man, I don't know that it was I shot one. I think it was probably I shot at one.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't kill my first deer with a bow until I was 16, but I hunted from like 7th or 8th grade. Remember, all the way through, and I mean, we were shooting arrows through the woods like left and right. I mean, we couldn't believe it. But the first like decent buck I killed, which was a giant to me back then, I killed with a rifle. Went out there by myself. Was actually spotted a real big deer and was trying to close the gap on him. And then this buck walked out and I shot it with a rifle. And do you guys remember the old Oklahoma Game and Fish magazine?
Yep.
I thought it was so cool because my buddy's dad sent my picture in and they put it in there.
Oh, wow.
I was like, that's the stuff right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say when that happened, I remember the feeling and the shaking that I felt.
Mm-hmm.
I've never felt this before. Like I've never done it. I mean, I was, being an athlete, I've hit big shots and done cool things, and it was close, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't it at all,
Yeah.
Actually. So yeah. Now that you as you think through it, it wasn't close. You just kind of thought it was close.
Yeah. So I'm Gunner's kind of the same way. He played sports, and I stopped kind of freshman, sophomore year. Had to pay for my own vehicle, but I also realized I wasn't going to go anywhere. Yeah. And so I was like, do I want to be standing under Friday night lights on the sideline, or can I go hit the tree and then go cheer my buddies on? And that's what drove my passion for hunting. Was I just flat out was like, you know what, Mom? And that was the hardest thing, was to tell my grandpa that I was done sports, because I was his youngest grandkid. And my grandparents are wonderful. They make it to every game, traveled across everywhere in Oklahoma to chase my cousin and my brother to watch them. And they were way better athletes than I was when it came to football. Basketball, we were built 2 different ways. I was more of a point guard. My brother's a big center, so I can't compare our game there. But But yeah, I quit and I told my grandpa, and I think I was pretty much scared, and he just, or, I probably had a look on his face. He patted on my back and said, "Whatever makes you happy makes me happy." And I was like, "Wow, well, I'll be hunting," And that's kind of what drove my passion, was that fire of 6th grade. I harvested my first actual mature deer, first buck ever, and I remember that feeling because my dad dropped me off, first time I ever hunt by myself, opening morning rifle. And see, my family are traditional hunters. You shoot your rifle or muzzleloader the week before season, you put it in a case, and we hunted muzzleloader and rifle. And
Right.
nothing, archery was not, you didn't talk about archery. I didn't even know it was really a thing until I grabbed a bow and I was like, wow, this is cool. And that I remember that feeling when I shot that buck. As he ran away, I was like, wow, I cried. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't have to hide anything. I was in 6th grade, I bawled. And so, yeah, I remember that first experience, and I was like, there is nothing out here that I've ever had that feeling from.
Yeah.
So, and this watching the world wake up too, that's worth it to me. I mean, I like to shoot deer early season, but I prefer to wait because it gives me more chances to watch the world wake up and the leaves fall and, everything change and transition from that summer to fall period, really. And it's just, or even fall from winter. It's just incredible. So that's kind of what hooked it to me, or what I got hooked on.
Right.
So, but
my first archery experience was pretty cool. My first buck was that archery buck, that state record buck.
Oh yeah, yeah, rub it in.
Yeah, right.
No, I killed deer before I got me a bow when I was younger. I shot a crossbow. But when I got old enough to get a bow, I got a bow and I hunted with it for a couple years. I didn't kill anything, and I actually killed it. The first thing I ever shot with a bow was a turkey with Taylor. It was that spring before I killed my big buck. I actually shot it with a different bow than I shot that big buck with, but that was a funny story. Talk about how lucky I am. He literally flew across the creek right at us, landed right there, and I pulled back and killed him. And Taylor's like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah,
because it's hard to kill turkeys with a bow.
Yeah.
But and we were sitting on the ground, just kind of laying in tall grass. It's it was. But yeah, that's my first archery experience.
That's when I knew he had the luck. Watching that turkey fly from, I don't know. I mean, we watched it on the other side of the creek forever, and then I heard it fly, and I was like, I think he's flying over here. And about that time, he landed, and the arrow was sent, and that thing fell over, and I was like, I've been chasing him all year with a shotgun. I can't even get him in range. So, yeah, that was incredible to watch that. So I kind of want to go over, kind of when did you start? So I'm guessing you kind of have I'm not guessing. I know you kind of have a plan put together of, what deer you're going to pass, kind of a management plan. When did you start kind of build a management plan and taking it to, that next step of passing the 4.5-year-olds and 5.5-year-olds or whatever your management plan is to get to that next category of deer?
Oh man, probably. I don't know if I can tell you the exact year, but I'd probably say close to 10 years ago. I was killing good deer, but I was just out there hunting, and if I saw a good one, I try to shoot it, try to figure it out, stuff like that. I really didn't pay too much attention to their age. It was just, is this a good buck? Like, it was going to make me happy. And I do miss those days. I'm not gonna lie. That's why I'm looking forward to this hunt in Arizona. Like, I'm just gonna go out there and find one that makes me happy, and we're gonna get it done. It's gonna be. But I would say probably 10 years ago, I made the decision where I was like, I'm not shooting a buck unless it's a big deer. And again, I wasn't really focused on age. I was just like, I want to kill a big deer.
Right.
And there was one year I went a full year and I didn't kill a buck. I want to say, so that was longer than that because it's 2024. That was probably right around 2010-ish, 2011. And I didn't kill a deer. I saw several big deer. It was this buck that I called Stickers. That is up here. You can't really see him, but he's up there. And I wounded him. I shot him in the elbow shot him in the elbow with a a bad broadhead, and it just didn't end well. And then he shed his antlers on Christmas. So that kind of ruined the rest of the year there. But having that experience, that kind of sold me on it. And then I was like, well, what if we can find the same deer again? And I found him again. And then I was like, okay. And then ultimately what I learned was that like these deer, they have personalities, if you will, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I learned that he hated the does until it was time to breed, but he was always with this one really old doe. So he had like 2 or 3 little bucks and one doe, and that was it that he was around. This was back before we were feeding and doing all that. We were just hunting white oaks, sumac, like stuff like that. But man, I had 3 years of history with this buck, and man, that first year I wounded him, he was big, and then the next year he was even bigger. He was a 9 by 10. He was a giant, and I shot him through the backstrap that year. Yep, and he shed his antlers like December 28th. So now I'm like, wait a second, is it me shooting him, you know, that's causing him to do it, or is it just something he does normal? But I don't know, and I never found those antlers, those giant antlers. I don't know. But and then I ended up killing him, and it was kind of like, it was a weird thing because I shot him, I double lunged him, and he just he fell over. I didn't spine him. I just shot him double lunged, and my brother at the time, he was just like, man, I think he just gave up. He was tired of you shooting him.
Yeah. He said, so, third chance, I'm out of here.
Yeah, like, leave, man. Just at least he got into the lungs this time. So that experience really kind of helped me realize that these deer, like all these deer are different. I've got a wall of European mounts I'm looking at, and they're all different. They all do some of the same things, but every now and again you'll get you an oddball, like this buck I killed this year that I just refer to as a crackhead. I know it's that'd be the right way to describe it, but that's how he acted. Was just like on edge, nervous, freaked out about everything, and nothing was okay. But yeah, man, going back to it, it's just, I remember that buck, and then that kind of set me on the path of, hey, let's go after some mature deer. How do we age these deer? And then Bill Winke, that dude might be one of the most knowledgeable guys out there, and he does a good job of explaining things, even though he might be a little monotone, but he does a good job of explaining things that make sense, at least to me. And I retained everything he said. And he went over different age groups of deer, and he was the first one I heard talk about how a 5-year-old will look 5 in October, and then he'll look 3.5 in December.
Right.
And, you know, he has all this history with it. So that helped me a lot, and it helped me because it was semi-live. So you were getting video like 2 days after. You know, they were pumping it out there on their website back then. Man, and that just kind of set me off down this road where I didn't really care about inches. That was cool. Cool. But now I was after, like, if I could kill a mature 130-inch 8-pointer, I'm in. Like, and my friends still make fun of me because that's like my thing. If you give me a big mature 7-pointer, it doesn't stand a chance.
You say that, but I've said it several times. My dream buck is over 120-inch 6-point. Like I mean, I know that's a monster, but like I don't know. I've always thought about that. Like what kind of guy is my dad has a big 6-point, and I've always seen that deer my whole life. I'm like, man, he had about 8 inches to each G2.
Yeah, no, I've got a big 7-pointer I killed a couple of years ago, and that buck's just it's cool.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I went on a back-to-back 2-year stinger with just old 8-points. And I mean, I still get this excited with them as I've shot, you know, my 180, 190-inch non-typical. You know, it's not about inches. It's all about the mature age. I mean, like, I don't know. The weird question, you know, someone asked on one of our podcasts one time, and I was like, would you rather shoot if there was 2 deer? Here's a scenario that they gave. If there was 2 deer standing side by side, one was a 3.5-year-old 170-inch deer, or there was a 8.5-year-old 120-inch 8-point, which one do you shoot? And I was like, the 8-point. And everyone's like, there's no way you would. I'm like,
I don't even think they said 170. They said like 140. They were like
What?
150. Like when they said, 155, 160 inch 3-year-old or just a 9-year-old dinky looking buck that is 9.5. I'm like, do I know he's 9.5? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, I'm shooting a 9.5-year-old. And they looked at me, and Taylor's like, I do the same thing. And they're like, you're stupid. Why would you do that?
Yeah, it was a big old fight deal there, but yeah, I was
it's
just
because you guys kill big deer. Like they were like, it's just because you guys have killed a couple big deer. You're not like the rest. And I'm like, come on, guys.
Dude, I get it. I do it 100% every time. And people called me crazy last year when I wouldn't shoot that buck we call Obie. And I refused to. I passed 27 yards. But I had a stud 8-pointer up in northwest Oklahoma that was super old. Had no idea how old he was because he's been old since we got the farm 3 years ago. And then I had a 9-pointer that we knew 5. And I was like, yeah, I'll just hunt those 2 deer. And we'll let him be. You can get another year. But it worked out.
So before we jump into him, let's take maybe 2 or 3 of your favorite deer hunts and kind of tell the short story of how that went down.
So yeah, man, I'm not going to say it's my favorite, but one of my favorites. I don't know if I'm allowed to plug any other stuff on there, but it's on Bow Life. Bow Life episode. It's called New Faces. You can't miss it. It's now on YouTube. But I doubled up in Oklahoma, and I shot that super old 7-pointer I was just talking about a second ago. And then I shot a buck that we called Big B. And the only reason why we called him Big B is because he had big main beams. And so I was like, he's fool us. Like, we got a picture of him lip curling, and I was like, oh, I think he's bigger than we think. So that was a really cool deer. I learned a lot about. He's got a unicorn point and just super heavy. But on opening day, we were looking at, it's like this whole story. So I've got cameras set up there. I readjusted this farm. And it's one that my buddy gave me permission to, who deer hunts. And he was buying this big farm up in and he was getting ready to close on it. Yeah, I know.
Where's it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, where's yeah, I don't know where that's at.
No. But he was getting ready to close on it, and they pushed closing back. And I said, dude, come hunt with us up there. And this is northwest Oklahoma. We're like, come hunt with us up there, man. We'll find something, right? We'll find something. And no joke, opening morning. So we don't hunt mornings. We hunt the evenings until we get closer to the rut. But in the morning, somebody went in. One of the neighbors went in and hunted the morning. Like I'm not gonna say like you're not supposed to, but if you're my neighbor, please keep hunting the mornings, early season. But they bumped this giant. And he shows up. It's like 8:30. First time we ever see him. He's 170-inch freaking stud. They bump him. He shows up. So I was like, guys, we got to go. And we get up there, and I'm like, Scott, you're going in on this buck. So we pick this little cedar tree out, and he goes and cuts a little hole out. And he slides in there. I go to my spot after Big B, and we get this surprise storm that pushes in and drops the temperature. His buck walks out. He shoots it, kills it. Big B comes out 5 yards, turns and looks the other way, but he's so close that all I have in the frame is his neck. So I'm at full draw, and I'm like, he's gonna go down the draw. And I let down, and he goes into cedars and never popped out. But yeah, opening day, Scott kills a freaking stud. The other guy that we were with, Hunter, he kills his biggest buck ever, and I almost killed 160-inch, freaking awesome buck. Mainframe 9-pointer that's just gnarly.
Yeah. Wow.
So fast forward that same deer, that hunt for that deer, I don't get another daylight picture of that deer until the morning of November 21st, right in the middle of the rut. I'm getting pictures of him everywhere, but he's just nocturnal.
Yeah.
Yep. And dude, I leave work, I fly up there, and I'm sitting there, and the 7-pointer shows up, and we hadn't seen him at all. He shows up on a hot doe. He comes in. He's hitting the scrape. He's snort wheezing. He's hissing. I don't know if you've ever heard him hiss, where they just. I don't know if you've ever heard it. I've got it on film.
Yeah, I've never heard the hiss, I guess.
Yeah, It's like just the last part of a snort wheeze. I don't know if he's.
Oh, yeah.
That's all they're doing. So he's in there. He's pissed. His ears are pinned back, and he's just doing his thing, running this 3-year-old off. Which that 3-year-old, I ended up is the buck I killed last year. So he's the 9-pointer. Kind of a cool story, right?
Yeah.
So I shoot the 7-pointer, the 40 yards. He takes 2 steps, falls over, but he falls into a drainage ditch and kind of slides down, so you can't see him. And that hot doe is now getting run all around by this 8-pointer, who's later the 9-pointer. And I mean, they're grunting and they're running, and I was like, Big B is up. He's in this draw. He's gonna hear it. And man, the next thing I see is I just see his rack coming through the cedars. And then you see his ears. He's pinned back.
Yeah.
That younger buck's ears are pinned back. And when they come around the cedar and see each other, the younger buck immediately realizes he's messed up.
Man, I was joking.
Yeah, so he flies out, right? And man, Big B pushes him around, takes over the doe, and goes into the feed station, takes a couple bites, but then just watching this doe, and then turns broadside, and I shoot him at 50 yards. And dude, yeah, it was kind of weird because if you watch the video in full speed, it looks like I shot him through the legs, but I shot him. I mean, I heart shot him. It's just that as he hit, he like flinched, and it snapped my arrow. So you see my lighted knife go down, but he runs 20 yards and then sits there and wobbles. And then when he falls, he gets in the same drainage ditch, but he slid all the way.
Wow.
So that went from not pulling my bow back since October 1st to tagged out.
Wow,
so,
that's awesome. And you said when was that when was that put out?
That hunt it was released 2 years ago because I killed him 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, that's they just re-released it probably this summer because it was on the Outdoor Channel, but now now it's on YouTube with Bow Life. So
are you connected with Bow Life or? Man,
Levi and Micah, some of my good friends. Levi's part of that crew that I was talking about that I travel with all the tournaments. So it's his show. But man, the next hunt without going into Obie, will probably this mule deer that I just killed this year. And the reason why is we ran into a bunch of fires in Wyoming. Heat like crazy, all the way up to 96 degrees. And we weren't seeing anything really worth hunting. I passed a mature buck that was heavy that just wasn't a day 1 buck.
Mm-hmm.
And then we found one on like day 3, put a stalk on it. As soon as we got into position, the wind hit us in the back and blew him out. And then I ran all the way around and cut him off and got set up, and the wind hit us in the back again and blew him out. So there was that. And then the second to last day, we put a really good stalk on another buck that was probably mid 160s.
Mm-hmm.
And the spike that he was with circled around and got downwind of us and kind of went, didn't really blow out, but went a little bit alert. He was really far. He was 100 yards, and I came to full draw. And as I was coming up, my stabilizer clipped the rock. And I couldn't get a shot on him. Like there was you don't force that. It's got to be perfect. So he runs off, and then we get to the last day, and we find a really good group of deer, and they feed into this drainage ditch, but the wind, it's like creating a vacuum, and there's no way to get in there. So we look and we find a little deer, and it's just like we've got 3 hours left, and there's a storm blowing in, and it's the coldest day we've had all day. So it was like, I want to say it was like 60 degrees, but the storm came off of the bighorns, and dude, it's blowing in, it's starting to rain. And I tell the guy I'm with, I'm like, I'm going to go give it a shot. And this whole time he's just worried that we're going to blow all the deer out. He's like, well, if you blow them out, we don't have any. And I was like, dude, we don't have any right now. And I was like, I got 3 hours. I got 3 hours left, and I got to go back to Oklahoma. And I started walking. I just wanted to glass this finger. And man, I started walking, and there was just something in the back of my head was like, hey, dummy, grab your bow. And so I went back, I jogged back to the truck, and the guy's name was Winfield. He was like, you got a deer? And I was like, no, I'm just getting my bow. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to come with you. I was like, you don't have to. I'm just going to go glass. And we're going to glass, and I just told him, I said, well, the good news is we're not going to blow any deer out of this ditch because I just walked up here. And at that time, 2 does blew out. And I was like, oh, sweet. So with mule deer, if a doe blows out and like just runs by a buck, like they're running too. They don't really just watch them run off. But they stopped right at the Y of the ditch, so they could go right and ruin everything, or they could go left and it would be okay. And they stopped and they stared at us. So I was like, dude, we got to go high. So we went up high on the hill and around and tried to push them down to the left, and it worked. And they went to the left, and sure enough, they went to the left, and a nice deer busted up and went over the hill. And I was like, okay, we need to go try to find that deer after we on them. So we're walking up to the sagebush patch that was right in front of where she was stopped, where she could have went left or right. And that storm's it's starting to rain sideways. I didn't put my rain jacket on. He did. But I was just like, man, we're just going to glass it. It's not going to hit us that bad. And dude, the gust of wind, we're getting right up on that sagebush, and a gust of wind blows the sagebush, and it goes like this. And when it does it, you can see a giant sitting there. Oh, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I hit the ground, and he didn't see it. He saw a littler one. He was like, that's not a shooter. I was like, there's 100% a shooter right here. So we slid down around the side, and I was ranging it, and it turned out to be basically 60 yards. And dude, it starts raining sideways, and then it hails on us. If you'll go to like September 14th, and it like the town of Sheridan got smoked in hail. So if you look at it, they got smoked. Looked like it snowed. And we were sitting out there, and I'm holding my bow and my hinge, and I'm shaking, and I'm trying to like keep the bill of my hat to where it's not hitting me in the eyes.
Yeah.
And man, I just said a little prayer, and I was like, Lord, please just give us a chance. And I said it out loud. And at that point, I was like, and then I just said one more time, I said, just a chance. And when I said just a chance, the sun popped out, right? And at this point, by the way, they had stood up by now. I've left that out. They've stood up, and we have a younger buck to our left, and he's got us pegged. So he's got us pegged. And when I said just give us a chance, that sun popped out. And I knew that with my equipment, or the way that hill rolled over, I couldn't actually see like his heart or his shoulder, right? But I knew I could clear it. I knew at 60 yards I was going to clear it because it wasn't but 26 yards away from us. And so I could see his tail, his back, his shoulders, but his head was behind that sagebrush, and he was like leaning back and itching his butt. And whenever I said, just give us a chance the second time, I came full draw like this, and then I popped up on my knees. And when I did that, he looked at us, and guys, the wind and the rain, it all stopped. And I rolled to my click, and I had this little mud clot thing, and I just, boom, and dude, it heart shot him, and he ran 50 yards and died.
Man. It's one of those things, like we said earlier, if it's meant to happen.
I couldn't keep that from happening.
Yep.
I couldn't go walk up on him and kick him out of his bed. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, I couldn't believe it. I've never felt that emotion because we worked our tails off all week, and I was freezing. So the boot tracks where my boot was at, and the mud was surrounded by all the hail. It was
wow. I bet blood tracking was a little weird. I mean, I know you said he only went 50 yards, but
yeah. Well, the blood was like. So when we first walked up there, my arrow was sitting on one of those the palmetto trees or whatever. It's just like laid like 10 yards past him, and there's blood all over it.
Wow.
And we saw him. He ran out and he fell. I mean, like he didn't. I don't even know if he went 50. Well, I'm just saying it. But it was this weird blood trail, like you could just see it in the grass. Yeah. But then by the time we went back and got my arrow off of that bush, like all the blood was like had run off of it. So it was pretty awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, was that your first harvest of this year, or was it the antelope?
The pronghorn was my first
Or
harvest. Yeah. Yeah. That was cool. We used a decoy. I don't know if you guys have ever done that, but we decoyed him in.
I've seen it happen, and so I've always wanted to try like the flag trick, like with the white handkerchief
Yeah.
and stuff, to try to get him. I thought about doing that. I've shot one pronghorn with a rifle. It wasn't as cool as what you're about to tell, but
Well, I mean,
I've seen that.
Yeah, decoying them in the rut. I mean, it's like, I mean, you're just holding the decoy up and you go walk into them, and then they get all mad and they come walking to you. And you need it because I still, like, he was close. And when I shot him, it was 87 yards, and that was close, for us.
Yeah.
Like, close. But yeah, that was the first thing. So that was so cool. The does, they don't want anything to do with the decoy. They're out. But the buck couldn't help himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. He stood out there. He was like 110, and I was like, the crosswind. I was like, I don't feel good about it. And then he just walked in. He walked in. And then
was it the one? Is it the one of the decoys you put on your bow actually, or were you using like two-sided?
Yeah, it's just like the ones that you have on the stakes. Looks like made out of the almost like the material.
Right.
So it's just those. And you can just stick it in the ground in front of you. So
you're right.
Stick it. So that was fun. Yeah.
I've seen those videos. I've only actually been out of state hunting 3 times. Once for turkey and 2 times for one was Nebraska, so mule deer and whitetail, but I harvested whitetail. And then this year I went to Kansas for muzzleloader. So that's the only times I've actually ever been out of state hunting. So
yeah, you got to do it, man.
Where did you? I'm looking at your mule deer right now. I hadn't seen it yet. My gosh, but
yeah.
I didn't catch it. Were you in Colorado?
Well, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What was that?
I didn't catch what state did you travel to for that mule deer? Wyoming. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. The pronghorn in.
Man. That's awesome, dude. Yeah. I drew Wyoming pronghorn once, and I didn't understand the system very well. So the unit I drew was just absolutely like there was public land, but it was all landlocked.
Oh, dang.
I know it. But
so you went on, you killed your pronghorn, and you did the mule deer, and then was anything else before the big story? Or
no, that was the plan. So when I was in Wyoming, I was up there hunting with all my buddies, Levi and Dustin the Crew. I met Dustin the Crew back here in Oklahoma years ago. Yeah, we were up there. We do it every year. It's awesome. It's a blast. It's just I say we do it every year. I don't know that I'll be able to draw next year, but we'll see.
Right. Who knows?
But no, while we were up there, we're looking at cameras, and I'm showing them Obie, and they're just like, dude, you just killed a giant mule deer, and now you're about to go shoot this thing. I wish it was that easy, because it wasn't that easy. But yeah, nothing.
No, let's go ahead. Tell us how the whole story of Obie and how it all came together.
Yeah, so man, the reason he got the name this year, Obie, my brother-in-law, he named him. He named him Obi-Wan Kenoki, which is the name of the farm. It's the family farm. And I was like, dude, that's a sweet name. We're gonna call him Obie. That's his name. Before that, he was just the Flat Top 10 as a 3-year-old, and then we changed his name to I don't name a lot of deer, so I know I got Big B and Obie. I'm not that original. I called him the Split G210 because that was the only way I could describe him. So 3 years ago, my wife and I are going in to hunt with another real original name. We're going to hunt the White 8. And we're going to hunt the White 8, and we're in there. She's bow hunting, so we're trying to get her on him. And this buck walks out that we called the Flat Top 10. He comes up on top of the hill, and he's hitting a scrape, and he has a hole blown through his back from muzzleloader season. Right. Wow. blown through his back. I'll have to text you guys some of the pictures of his back, even like now, 3 years later. It was wild. You could see bone. Like I was
Oh,
glad.
wow.
I was like, I don't know how he survived it. And now that I've been able to clean him, I have no idea how he survived it because it
Really?
actually broke the top part of his vertebrae off. Like they're gone, blew him off.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I guarantee it knocked him over, but he got back up. So filmed him then. The white eight never came into bow range. He came in and fed. And then that was late October. So he shed his antlers sometime in November after
Oh,
that. And I was able to get both of them. I don't know where they're at. They're in the pile over here somewhere. So that was him as a 3-year-old. As a 4-year-old, we're just not shooting that buck, with losing antlers and all that. It's just not what we're doing. And we had some other deer to hunt. But as a 4-year-old, he showed up, summered on us, all of that, shed his velvet, disappeared. And then he showed back up in February with no antlers.
oh,
So don't know where he shed them or anything like that. Never found those set, but obviously with the hole in his back, like he has this like a divot, like he took a sand wedge and just caught it. Yeah. So that was him as a 4-year-old. And then as a 5-year-old, he was a pretty freaking nice deer. Super framey, not that heavy, good brows, good 2s, good 3s, really good 4s. He had better 4s last year than he had this year.
Oh.
And then he had little split G2s as a 5-year-old, definite 5-year-old. But I had another buck that I was hunting, and then I had the 2 bucks up north that I was hunting. And actually, I had 3 deer I was hunting up north. The first big deer I was hunting got killed, I guess, like a mile and a half north, and got killed quick. We actually bumped him getting the hay off the field. We were doing it late, and it just happened, and he took off, and then the dude got killed like 2 days later.
Oh, man.
I think they said he went like 173, like he was a stud. But I have his sheds sitting over there from the year before too. So that was one that he had cool split G3s. He was awesome. And then the next deer I was hunting, he ended up just going south onto the wheat that we couldn't hunt that part of the farm. So then I hunted that 8-pointer that scored 144, and then I hunted the 9-pointer, which was the 8-pointer that was chasing around the doe when I killed Big B. Yep. And I had Obie at 27 yards sometime in October, but I was still hoping that other buck was still alive. And honestly, there was just no reason to kill him with all the other deer. Was he an awesome buck? Yeah. He probably scored 155 to 160. He was a stud, but you could tell that he still had like lots left. And the fact that I felt like he was probably recovering for that amount of time prior. I was like, man, we might actually get to see what he can do.
Right.
So man, my brother-in-law and his dad, they plant oats out there on the home farm, and I'm telling you, I'm sold on oats because ever since they've planted oats, the deers, dude, everything about them's healthier. Body size, antler, mass, points, everything. Like I'm not seeing deer busted up anymore. I know that may not all play to that same thing, but
but
I can tell you, ever since they started,
line.
Yeah, when you started planting those, things changed. So
real quick, before that, the oats, was it wheat or?
No, it's just Bermuda hay.
Bermuda. Okay.
Yeah, Bermuda hay, and then the feed stations that I have established. Right. We try to keep them sucked into the middle of the farm.
Did they have any ag fields anywhere around, like anything else?
So yeah, I got to be careful what I say here. Yes, we don't. But there's a piece of property to the north. They plant a lot of food plots. They do all of that. Okay. And then the property that borders me along the east and northeast is property that they plant. There's people that hunt that. that they plant. And then on the west, I know people plant, they've got a big wheat field. So I really got to, I try to feed, I try to make sure they never run out of food and they
Right.
don't have, or that way they never leave. That's the goal. But
Right. The only reason I was asking that is because I'm big into looking at like what make deer grow and all that. So I was just trying to reference if there's anything around to see, kind of go back on that. Gunner and I hunt around where it's pretty much just blackjacks. A lot of people think we have ag ground where we are, which we have a wheat field 2 miles one way and a mile the other way. And when I say wheat field, I'm talking about pretty heavily grazed cattle wheat field. So there's not a lot there to eat. So, and why I was reference that, because as soon as we've kind of Gunner and his dad kind of have their plan, I kind of have mine, and it's like it seems like since before Gunner harvested his deer, and we kind of have the same plan, do a couple different things. It's like our deer have blown up, and so it's crazy to see. That's why I was asking that, because I was trying to, in my mind, picture what your setup was to see what the oats were doing. So
yeah, no, it was all Bermuda before, and then they did oats, and then
which isn't Bermuda? Isn't that called like the desert of wildlife?
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's no
Or
good.
the wildlife desert or something. There's like nothing in Bermuda.
Yeah, no good for anything except for cattle and all the horses like that. So I get it.
Right.
But the other thing though that also helps is just age.
Yep. Oh yeah.
It never hurts any of them. So, so man, that year I ended up tagging out on those 2 bucks. So last year, and dude, we look for his sheds, Obie sheds, like crazy, and never find them. So that's going to be the goal this year, is to try to find those suckers. Hopefully they're a little bit chalk white and I can see them easier now. But I never find his sheds. And then I continue to feed year round. But man, once those oats get going, you can't get those deer to come to rice bran, protein, corn. You can't. They're gonna stay out in the oats, and the only time they're leaving it is to grab some water, and that's it. So it makes it fun because you can go out and you can scout in the summer and you can really do some really good glassing and see ways. But it got close to starting to do that. And my brother-in-law calls me while I'm at work, and he's like, "You're never going to believe this." What? He's like, right behind the house. He's got a big bottom behind his house. He's like, right behind the house is the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life. And he's seen some of my deer, or he's seen all of my deer. I'm like, and he goes, "I'm telling you, as big as your biggest deer you've got in there." And I said, "I know who it is."
Yeah.
Thank God. He goes, "And then there's one out there that's like 3 feet wide." And I was like, really? Because that could only been 1 buck, which is the white 8, which puts him at 10 years old this year.
Oh, wow.
Really? And he's like, "Dude, he's so wide. He just doesn't have very tall points." And that's the white 8. He's got like G2s like this.
Yeah.
He said, "But Chris, this other one is insane." And I was like, "All right, well, I know who they are. Perfect." So then I go and you start the whole process, right? You want to figure them out, figure out what they're doing, why they're behind his house. I didn't know at the time, especially in daylight in the summer, right? That early, because he went and worked out, and then came back to the house and they were out there. So I throw cameras out everywhere, and then I'm like, man, they're not coming to the feed station. So let me see if I can find them in the middle of the farm, because ideally that's where they would be in this root, because we weren't running cattle out there, so they got really overgrown. And that helped a lot with holding the deer numbers, because the weeds and everything was so tall. I forget the name of the weed that we saw down in the water. It's a very generic name. I texted my buddy Dallas that works for ODWC.
Yeah, we've had him on.
Yep. I texted him and he was like, "Yep, that's it." I can't remember the name of the weed. He will. But I always saw him out there eating it.
Would it have been, it wasn't Cocoa Burr, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Because I don't know. I didn't know they liked that until a couple years ago.
Yeah. I didn't know they liked this. And he really was like, "Man, they don't eat a lot of it." And I'm like, "Well, I'm watching them eat it. Like, I am seeing it." So man, I casted out that net, so to speak, of cameras, and I'll never forget it. I was getting in bed. I go to bed early, like right now is my bedtime. But But I got in bed and I was like, I pulled out my phone just to see, because we got a lot of pigs, and I was like, man, let's see if the pigs found that corn. And he was the first deer to
Oh,
walk
wow.
up.
That's
And
awesome.
I was like, babe. And she's like, what? And she's like,
Yeah.
what? Showed her. And I was like, got him. So that kind of started it, right? So then that was, and he was in the middle of the farm, which was perfect. But because I got so much pressure on my north fence, especially the one gentleman that loves to, I hope he sees this, he loves to sit on my fence line
Mm,
and face our property.
I got one of those.
Yeah, he knows who he is. So that'd be cool if he sees this. But yeah, anyways, so I knew that I had to start sucking them into the middle of the farm. So I relocated all my feed stations south and got way away from them. And I created the middle feed station where I first got his picture. And man, I'm talking pigs came in, blew it up. So I ran hog panels around it, and he jumped in 30 minutes after I left. Like, he was there. And I was like,
Yep.
dude, here we go. We're cooking. So then I put in a secondary location to the south, just in case he gets bumped by pigs, because he hates pigs. That's like, he hates
Yep.
pigs, and he is feeder shy. He does not like feeders at all. So ultimately, I'd start to get him used to feeders, but I never got a picture of him eating out of it, ever. He'd just eat corn on the ground. So I'd always spread the corn on the ground and rice bran on the ground.
Yeah.
But when he would get bumped by these pigs from the center farm, he'd go to the south, or from the center part of the farm, he'd go to the south. And I was like, okay, so every time he gets bumped, he pops up there. So I was like, okay, data point. And then I really, I mean, I use it. It's a tool, but the moon guide and the red moon, I tried to try to find some sort of, reoccurring event with him. And it seemed like every time there was a new red moon, he daylighted, regardless of all that. And by the way, he continued that. I didn't kill him on a red moon, but he was true to that when he was on.
Yeah.
So man, I'm getting pictures of him. I'm getting videos of him. I got cool videos of him with all of his velvet hanging off, and he's turning, and it's still wet. And it's so cool. Just looking like a hammer, man. And,
Yeah.
And so go up to Wyoming, having a great hunt, come back. October 1st, we have a northeast wind. October 2nd, I think we had a northeast wind. So my wife and I go in. She's going to film me. And man, we go in, and I was explaining to her, we've got a couple tests we got to pass first. So the first one is I got like 6 does that are going to come through. And they're not necessarily hitting the feed station. I'm like 75 yards away from the feed station. But they'll come in and hit the feed station, or they'll pass it and go up and feed on these white oaks that are dropping on top of the hill. We had some bur oaks, these young bur oaks that were dropping early.
Mm-hmm.
And no longer than I tell her that, here come the does. And man, they walked like right on top of us. I did not want them to walk that close. Like, I didn't think they would. But man, they walk right in on top of us, and then they feed off. And I was like, well, we did it. There's our test number 2. And then our second test was that white 8-pointer. All right. And I normally wouldn't pass this buck. He'd be dead. He's old. He's got arthritis. His knees are all swollen like that big. Got a limp to him, but he's just an awesome old deer. So here he comes. Well, he's coming to us, and he runs. Him and Obie were running together, right? So it's like the next deer. And he's an hour and a half before dark. I'm like, this is it. It's going down. She's running the camera, and I can see in the weeds out there, I can see Obie's split G2 just walk through. And I was like, it's going down. And the white 8 comes in, and then we hear some squealing up on top of the hill. And turns out there's a sow that must have been hot, and there's 2 boar hogs in there, and they go to fighting like you've never heard before. Freak my wife out. And dude, they clear everything out. So no Obie, right? We get down, we get out. My entrance and exit, that was probably the most important thing on this setup. Keep in mind, the south setup was the spot I was going to if he got bumped.
Mm-hmm.
But he just kind of relocated to it. It's a safe spot, but it's perfect for me because we've got a big creek that's got deep washed out banks, steep banks, probably 15 to 20 feet
Oh,
deep.
wow.
And I'll come down the creek in the water. The water doesn't get much over your calf high. And then I bought a rope ladder off of Amazon at Carabiners, and I
Yeah.
hooked it on a tree and rolled it down there. So it's got like composite steps. And I've put it on my story. I've done all that, but we would use that to get up that muddy bank. And it was money. And then I think we had 6 steps, and we were at the base of the tree.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh,
I just cleared all the leaves off of that. Dude, we would get in and out with deer at 40 yards, and they would never see us.
that's awesome.
Yeah, awesome setup, great setup, worked perfect. I could hunt it with any east wind, and then I could hunt it with a straight north or a straight south. West, you couldn't get away with it. So we hunt him on the second, and then we hunt him again, and we go in, and the pigs do it again. They blow everything out. And it's just 2 pigs. It's not like it's 30 of them. It's 2
Right.
pigs. So that doesn't happen. He actually goes MIA for a couple days, and then I figured it's just the acorns, right? The acorns start falling, normal stuff. And then we are back out there, and there's a bunch of calving pens up front of the farm, and they were going to move a bunch of calves the next day, and they brought horses over, and we're just going to leave them in the yard. And with not 30 minutes of legal shooting light left, here comes the white 8, and we can see a deer behind him. We know it's him.
Yeah.
Right?
Like clockwork.
Yep. And dude, these horses, they forgot to shut the gate. And these horses get out onto the main farm, and they just come running in. I don't know why. They're like spooked. I don't know what spooked them, but they're spooked. They're scaring each other. Dude, they come running in, and the does start losing their mind, and then all the deer clear. So that happens. So I call my brother-in-law. He's like, dude, they're not supposed to be out there. They go get them. They're like, man, our bad. Like, we didn't realize it wasn't shut. It's no big deal, right? It is what it is. And what I had was, dude, I had the mindset that if it was, like you said, if it's meant to happen, I can't keep it from happening. But if it's not meant to happen, I can't make it, right?
Yep.
So it would have been easy to get down and be like, it's just not meant to happen. But dude, I've got a great support system. My wife, I forget who said it, what podcast said it, but they said, you don't kill big deer with a bad wife. Like, you just don't. Dude, my wife is a rock star. And then I've got buddies that we talk every day, and we game plan, like my deer, his deer. It's just,
Yep. We have that too.
Yeah. My brother-in-law, making sure we're not letting thermal hog hunters go in there and kill pigs. And he's like, I don't think it bothers them. They're suppressed. And I was like, I don't either. But if you killed something in my living room and left it there, I'd probably notice. And he was like, man, that's a good point. He's like, tell you what, you kill that deer, and then we'll let them back in there. And I was like, sweet. So, man, all that, my sister-in-law helping with the kids, like, it was just everything. I don't know if you guys saw the picture I posted with like the whole family here, but that was everybody. Like, everybody was there that was helping, except for my buddies that game plan. So that was awesome. But so we go in one more early season sit until we kind of got a stretch of bad weather and wind. And we have bobcats come in, and they're super cool to watch, but the deer, man, this one doe wouldn't let them go.
Yep.
And she goes to blowing, and I just saw the does, and that was it. And I was just like, yeah, I wouldn't go up there either where people were screaming and yelling, that was me. So that kind of gets us pretty close to muzzleloader season. And to sidebar this, I had found a really nice buck on a farm that I'll call the river farm, that I have never had permission to bow hunt until this year, but I could fish it. It was phenomenal fishing. they gave me permission. I didn't really ask. It was just offered. And while we were fishing, we found this stud, this 6x5, right? So muzzleloader season gets here. I know about the 6x5, and Obie goes missing. So after he's gone like 3 or 4 days, I was like, I need to go find a backup buck. Like, I need to find another deer to hunt because sitting around, it's not doing it for
Yep.
me. And I'm moving cameras, I'm adjusting, and he's either already locked down on a doe, or 2, he's doing that big rut loop that they'll do, you know, and they'll go check and see what everybody's got going on.
Yep.
So then I go and I start trying to find the 6x5. Then he shows back up, so I pull off 6x5. And man, I hunt him. I think I only get to hunt him like one time, and he goes missing again. So I go back to the 6x5, and now I'm on the 6x5. So now it's like I'm going in, I'm hunting him, and he just didn't show up, or he didn't come back through that way on his way up to the alfalfa. And then I get a picture while I'm at work, and Obie's back, and he's locked down on a doe in the middle of my farm. And I'm like, okay, that's good. But then he's there 8:30, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12:03. Like, they're just killing me. And so finally I went in there with my boss, and I was like, hey, I've got to go. I'm going to go kill him. Like, you better kill him. So like even my boss was in on it, right?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm trying. So I slide in there, and I got some of the most amazing footage of him. Well, he's beautiful. But I slip in there, and they're bedded 75 yards away, and I'm able to get up the ladder into the tree and set up. And they come out, and his body language is at that of a buck that is locked down on a doe, right? That kind of skittish, but not letting her go and all that. And he follows her, and then they go and water down in the creek, and I'm like, he's coming back. And here comes this doe, and she circles around, and she comes to 37 yards, and she pees. And then she whips around and looks. And I was like, he's coming. So camera, I roll it out, and he shoots through the gap. He comes through, and the sun's over my back shining on him. Dude, he comes out, he hits this scrape, and he just looks like the king of the woods.
Yeah.
You know, turns sideways, keeps looking up on the hill. But then I realized his body language is way different. It's like he doesn't care anymore. Like, he's just like the boss.
Uh-huh.
Keeps looking up on that hill, and he looks at the doe, and he makes the scrape, and then he turns and he walks into the cedars. And I pick my bow up, and I put my hinge on there. I'm waiting. You know, he's going to step out there. I'm going to shoot him with a 40-yard pin. And the next thing he does is he pops out on the backside of the cedars, and he goes up the hill towards those other deer. And he goes missing for 14 days.
Oh, man.
Yep. So he goes missing for 14 days. And then I get a rumor. You know how rumors go.
Yep.
Somebody shot the biggest deer they've seen in that part. It was a giant frame. They even said 13-pointer. And I was like, there's only one deer that's a giant frame. That's a 13-pointer.
Yeah.
I think he's dead. And I made a post on Instagram, and I said, I'm going to hunt a deer with no name, you know, now that there's potential that the buck I was hunting is dead. And man, so many people related to that because they shot me messages, and they're like, man, mine just got hit by a car. Mine got shot by a muzzleloader hunter, you know, stuff like that. Or mine's MIA. I don't know where he went. So that was cool. But, man, I go in and try to hunt the 6x5, no luck. And kind of go back and forth with that. Obie shows up for, I think, 3 pictures and leaves. And then rifle season starts, and it's that opening weekend when it was like 78 degrees on that Sunday, humid, and the wind was blowing 35 miles an hour. Yeah, crazy, right? So I scratched my eye and had to get medicated drops, and was going to hunt the morning, but I couldn't because it was watering like crazy.
Yeah.
So I had to go in wearing sunglasses, looking all cool, I guess. And dude, I get in there, and I'm like, this ain't gonna work. I'm sweating. This isn't gonna work. My buddy Art Brown, a former professional archer too, he was like, yeah, it's tough. He's like, the barometer's falling. He's like, it's humid, it's hot. He's like, but it's the rut. You never know. And dude, I was sitting there, and a button buck comes by, then a doe comes by, And then next thing you know, here comes this 6x5 dragging his front leg, hits a scrape, steps out at 32 yards, and I shoot him. Like, it was like that quick.
Yeah.
Wasn't even 5 o'clock yet. It was like 4:30.
Wow.
Yeah. And killed a 163-inch buck. Like, just a stud, right?
Probably.
Yep.
That's your backup buck. That's a sad situation there.
That's what I was saying. You know you're in the chips when your backup buck 60. But so we kill him, or I get him killed, and you know, it didn't really. I don't know. I love, dude. The buck was great, but I still was just like, dude, Obie's alive. I'm expecting. Never got a picture of the buck that supposedly was shot, right? And then he shows up a couple days, like I want to say like Wednesday, and I get 2 pictures of it. I'm like, he's alive. Thank God, he's alive. And he leaves. So then we have Thanksgiving, and then Friday after, I've got my boy, so we take him out. He kills this awesome buck, tight rack 12-pointer with some extras, and we end up going to a dinner up in Guthrie. So Saturday morning, man, I was like, I'm not gonna go. You know, it's kind of hot. I got to clean Jason's deer up and do all that. And so I'm sitting on the couch with my wife drinking coffee, and here comes Obie on one of the cameras on a doe, right? I'm like, okay, he's back on a doe. So that's that Saturday. So I go in, and the wind is going to go southwest, west, northwest from 2 to 5 p.m. So where he was headed to, I've got to be on the far edge, and I can't really get in aggressive to him. It's rifle season, but I'm bow hunting.
Right.
So I get set up, and dude, I see every deer, and I see them all in bow range. They're circling downwind of that main feed station. And I even see a buck that we call Obie Jr., and I just don't see Obie. So I get down, and I get back to the truck, and he's with the hot doe in the feed station. So I'm just assuming that they were bedded tight, like really tight to it. But the wind I need isn't coming until Sunday afternoon. And I had a Thanksgiving thing that we had to do. We did a Talladega Nights Thanksgiving. Have you guys remember that? No? They got like all sorts of fast food.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm all jacked up on Mountain Dew.
Yeah, man. So we decided to do that. It was awesome. I had Panda Express, I think, the best part of it. But yeah. So man, we do that, and we're playing this game, and we're having fun doing it. I'm like, guys, I gotta go. Like, it's getting close. I know he's around there. Deer movement was terrible that morning, right? That Sunday morning, and I was like, babe, it's going down. He's gonna move tonight. So I finally get out of there, and I get to the gate. I'm unlocking the gate. It's 2:30, and I'm on the phone with one of my buddies, Dwayne, game planning. He's like, what are you gonna do? I was like, well, let me see if there's anything moving yet. And I pull it up, and Obie is fighting another buck. 4 pictures. I get 4 pictures straight on south of that feed station, and he's fighting another buck. And I'm like, dude, of course he's fighting another buck right now. This deer's a freaking crazy crackhead, like just going nuts. So I freaking fly in there. I get in that creek. I go as fast as you can down that creek. I get set up. I get in the tree. I get set up, and it's silent. Like there's nothing. And the wind is 1 mile an hour out of the east. So it's quiet. I should be able to hear it. And then my mind kind of starts going to the wrong spot because I'm like, dude, what if this 4-year-old 130-inch 10-pointer just whooped Obie because he's all run down, and now the neighbor's going to shoot this 180-inch buck, and I was just like, man, I was going in a bad spot, and I was like, nope, stop. And so I got this little prayer I've been saying this year, just being thankful and really focusing on being in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So through that, just thanking him for the opportunity. Like I got to leave Thanksgiving early, like dinner or lunch early, and all that. And man, I say that, and I'm sitting there, and then I hear 2 squirrels, and I'm looking.
I have to look.
Yeah. And then, dude, I hear the grunt, like of all grunts. It's like real long, just brah, about 50 yards to my right in those cedar trees. And I was like, okay, that's definitely like what I'm looking for. So I'm glassing and I can't see nothing. I can't hear anything. And then I hear all the noise to my left again. So I look and it's the same two squirrels. They just come out of the tree and they're running across. And as I turned back, Obie almost has that 10-pointer in the air pushing him up the drainage ditch, and they're just going at it. So I'm guessing they were, posturing, doing whatever, and that's the grunt I heard. But you could hear, going back and looking at it, you could hear the sound of their antlers when they were fighting. Hear that. So I flipped cameras on. I flipped second angle on, double punched my main camera, so didn't get the shot on my main camera, but got the second angle. So they go up to the ditch. I range them. It's 56 yards. I come to full draw. I roll to the click, and then I'm like, I don't even know what deer I'm shooting at. So I let down, and I would have shot the 10-pointer. 100% would have killed the wrong. Yep. So they kind of spin back and forth in the top of that drainage, and then Obie pushes him back down to the bottom, and then they kind of like just stop where they're locked up with their legs. And I range him, and it's basically 50 yards. And dude, I'm jacked up at this moment. So it's shaking. I'm shooting a hinge. Are you guys familiar with what a hinge is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I roll to the click, and then I just keep rolling. Boom, and I double lung him. But it was weird because I'm guessing as he was fighting, he's twisting his body. So it went in normal double lung height. And then as he rolled back to me, my arrow was sticking straight up. Like it was like, it appeared that it was sticking straight up out of him. I could still see like the shine of the broadhead blades. And then they go into the cedars. And I mean, I saw blood almost immediately. They go into the cedars and they're fighting. And then they fight for however long to where I realized that I'm like, oh, the 10-pointer's just beating him up. Like he's dead. He's beating him up. So I go to get down. That's whenever I realized I double punched because I went to turn it off and I hit record.
Oh.
Dadgummit. But so I get down, and as I ease up there, I can see him, and I'm like, all right, and I wanted to make sure Obie's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I see Obie's dead, and that other buck's just kind of got him. And when the 10-pointer sees me, he actually blows, and he tries to run. And they no longer have any movement, and they're completely locked up. So the 10-pointer's left main beam went around and was in Obie's forehead, and in Obie's left main beam, I've got him back here, was through his jaw. And whenever I got there, he was just chewing on the end of his jaw. Like he chewed part of Obie's main beam off.
Really?
Yeah. So then I'm like, well, nobody's going to believe this. And I didn't think, I was like, they're going to come apart. So I'm filming it real quick with my phone.
I think you should post that.
I posted part of it. I posted a couple.
Yep.
I'm working on posting the rest of it, but I don't like the edit, like the way you have to chop it up. Because it took the video of me getting them apart was like 5-6 minutes long.
Oh wow.
So, and then there's another video that's like almost 4 minutes of me trying to get them apart, where I just thought I could separate them. That was not going to happen. And he was like, dude, I mean, it was a live deer, and he was not that tired then the first time. Yeah. So he's giving me hell, going back and forth. So that's whenever I realized I had to get him apart. So there's a part of the video where I've got my phone in the grass propped up, and I'm like, how'd Chris die? So I was like, he got run over by this deer, and I'm just like saying it out loud. And then I'm like, at one point, I'm like, I'm touching a live deer. Like, this is nuts, And every time I touch him, he'd try to, like, push against me, right? So then I try to get them apart, and I can't. So I jack with them, and then I run back to the truck because my wife had me cut down this shrub in the front yard that morning, and I still had the handsaw sitting in the bed of my truck. So her and my kids they're on their way, right? So I run back to the truck, get the truck, I pull up, and they're all there. So I have her film it. And I didn't like the spot where he's at, because where he was at, he was kind of in a corner. So if he gets loose, he's got to come my way. So I just drug Obie and the other deer and just used the other deer pushing against him. I drug him about 15, 20 yards. to where we actually had like an open area to where he could get out of there. And dude, I used that handsaw and eventually figured out like where I was going to cut him loose, and I just cut him right below. I cut him right below his G2.
Wow.
And yeah, and man, it popped. It was so I cut his G2 right below his G2. This popped off, and he didn't realize it. So I had to kind of walk up there and push him with my left leg, and dude, he pops up, and you can hear me in the video go, "Gosh dang it!" Because the way he's running, I was like, he's not surviving. Because this is a deer we didn't want to kill. He's got all the potential in the world, and I mean, honestly, Obie was the target, so this guy was like an innocent bystander. Well, he wasn't that innocent because he started the fight, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, so cut him loose, and then the wild emotions of this chase with this amazing animal is over. But then it's like, what just happened?
Yep.
So yeah, that's the story of Obie, man. He giant, 180 inches, freak, mainframe 10-pointer with huge splits. I mean, I got it here. I don't know if you guys will be able to see him, but with huge brows and all that. Yeah. He's a freaking stud. He's got a little cheater back here. But yeah, man. Just a giant frame on him.
So from last year to this year, how many inches did he put on?
Probably 20, maybe a little bit more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man. That's awesome, man. That you showing him in the frame right there doesn't do that deer anything. I mean, I'm sure the pictures that I see on social media don't do that deer anything, but he looks like a giant in your pictures. I mean, golly.
Yeah,
I mean, he's not each deer. He is a giant, but I'm saying.
Yeah, no, his frame is unbelievable. It's the biggest frame whitetail I've personally held, and I've held several 200-inch deer. But I took him up to my buddy Scott's office, and his daughter walked out. She was like, "Oh my gosh, he's bigger than he looks in the pictures." And she was just like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah." And he's heavy, dude. He's so heavy, not just circumference, like the actual weight of the antlers.
Yeah,
like I bet he weighs several pounds more than this mule deer. And the mule deer, the mule deer is great.
What do you know what the mule deer scored?
Yeah, he's 176 and change. Wow. So with no brow tines.
Shoot, 176-inch mule deer. What? 88 and something. Pronghorn?
Yeah, pronghorn. 80.
163-inch or 162-inch backup deer. And then a 180. What you said, 2 or 80?
He'll be 83.
183. God. I mean, Well, I mean, I know there's an answer, but what else do you ask for in here?
Yeah, I know. No.
A 200-inch deer somewhere else. You know what I mean? But I don't know where. I think what
I asked for is my taxidermist Ashley to give me like a discount.
Yeah.
The return
I'll drop your name in my video.
No, she takes care of me. She does me good.
That's awesome, man. What an incredible year, man. That's like a dream. I mean, if that doesn't solidify what, like the local legend series is all about, that's it right there. And that's awesome, man. But yeah, definitely kudos to you for the year. I do want to say before we kind of end it, I've been staring at this whole time, but I think it'd be your left shoulder unless you're not mirroring.
Yeah. This one?
So I've been staring. Yeah. So, and it looks like the eye guard matches the other side, but then a second ago I caught it. It doesn't match the other side. That other eye guard's like a 12-inch dagger, isn't it?
Yeah. It's 11 and 6/8, and it's like a big whale tail.
Yeah, I was staring and I saw the crevice kind of go up the neck, and I was like, that's not the neck right there. That's the eye guard. Wow.
Yeah. He grew a real big eye guard on his left side that year, and his left side was his weak side, and then that right side's a big 6-point side. So that's it.
So before we kind of get off here and end this thing, what from this year, what did you learn? Maybe some of your The good, bad, and uglies. What did you learn, or what would what would your 2 cents be to someone that is targeting their deer? What would your
Man.
like? I know it's a tough question.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the one thing is you got to control what you can control, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I talked about, like my mind, I started going in a bad spot. I guess what I left off there was I heard a gunshot, right? And I was like, what if that's him? That's what led me to start going down that route. But man, if you can stay positive, and I know this is weird because it doesn't have anything to do with what a deer's doing, but if you can have a positive mindset, it's pretty crazy how infectious that is and how it just
Mm-hmm.
works. Right? And you just
Yep.
keep going, keep working. But the biggest thing for me this year was I stayed focused on what I was after. Even if the deer wasn't there, I didn't like. I kept my focus on like the right things to do. So I didn't hunt it when the wind was bad. I get it. I got pictures of him in daylight all morning, but I'm not going in there to hunt it with a bad wind.
Right.
I made sure you think like I didn't want to walk down that creek every time in and out, right? It'd have been so easy to just walk out in front of my stand and walk the 2-track out in the
Mm-hmm.
evenings. But it's not worth letting these deer know they're being hunted.
Right.
And so that's the biggest thing is like trying to create some sort of safe space if you have if you have private land. Like
Mm-hmm.
keep those deer from knowing you're hunting them, and they'll always come back, even if they are going on those crazy breeding cycles where they go and breed all these does, like Obie did. They're going to come back to where they feel safe and where they have food. The other thing that I learned was that Obie was pushing these does up into this little wood lot that everybody would drive, and that's where he was pushing them to breed them. And he was literally going through just a doe, and he'd have her in there, another one in there. And when it started, I feel like it started like October 25th to 28th ish is when he started nuts. But yeah, he was pushing these does up in these areas. And I know I've read things where there's studies where they feel like these bucks will go and breed these does in the same spots. You're trying to push them into the same spots. Man, Obie did that. Now,
Wow.
once he bred, once it felt like the does, he bred the does or they weren't in anymore, he clearly went and looked for some other does. Just based off of me getting pictures of him coming back onto the farm.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of what I learned, because I mean you learn the personalities of the deer if you just pay attention to what they do on the cameras, when they do it with the moon phases, what do they do with certain winds. You can learn that.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing that I've done this year is just control my mindset, and if I can control it and we can stay positive, I keep having fun, and I just don't get lazy and make those mistakes and walk out, on the 2-track, or I just, anything like that, hunting let's say a rough, like a 50-50 wind.
Right.
Just really it.
So where is this? Is the video of Obie going to be put out on Bow Life? Do you have a channel? Where and kind of when are you thinking it'll be put out?
I don't think it'll be on Bow Life, just because I didn't get the shot the way those guys. There's Micah is so good, so what they do, and they've killed so many animals that I don't know that they. But Instagram, on my Instagram page, I'll probably put something together like a reel or video or something like that. And then maybe we'll put it on YouTube. I think it's kind of cool. I think a lot of people may see it, but yeah, all my stuff is just my name, Christopher Hammond, on Instagram and Facebook. I don't even know what it is on YouTube. That's bad.
Well, if you look it up, send it to me, and I'm gonna tag that, and then I'm gonna look back and get your video off Bow Life of your 2 harvests and the 1 season, all that, and I'll drop that below. And so yeah, and then I'll definitely tag all your socials too. So
yeah,
if anyone, check them out. I mean, like I said, I've been following Chris for, I don't know, probably 3, 4, maybe more years. I don't know. Time slips my mind, and it seems like this guy knows what he's doing. I mean, obviously he does. Look at the wall behind him, hear stories, go look at his pictures. I mean, it's awesome. So kudos to you. I mean, you give something like us. I know we're not too young, but I always look up to people like you and try to figure out what are they doing that I need to start doing to up the deer. And so thank you for coming on and, giving us those tactics and definitely sharing the story of Obie. So,
well, I appreciate you guys, man. It's been a blessed year, and yeah, good luck.